Crowds would start attacking us who were around the courthouse, and the attacks were very, very vicious. We were trying to protect everybody we possibly could, you know, and especially there was one young white lady from England, Constant Lever.
James Foreman, you know, tried to get me into one of the cars that had come to take us off. It wasn't specifically me. There was a move to take everybody off. We were told, you know, as soon as the cars come, you'll all go. And a group of people had already gone. So he tried to, well, he did put me into the car.
And that is one of the things that really set the mob off. And the police, the other thing that set the mob off is that the police appeared to be on the side of the mob. There was a shotgun in the car. That's not illegal. It's in plain view. And the police took the shotgun and gave it to a member of the mob.
He pointed it at James Foreman. He said, "Don't you dare touch that car, nigger." James Foreman then did what I thought at the time was one of the most courageous acts I've seen. The moment the man said to him, "Don't you dare touch that car, move back," he immediately put his hand on the car. And the man did not respond, because, I mean, when people respond with that much courage, it does put people off.
And so we made a decision to put Constant in the car, and I think I got in the car. And that's when, as I got in the car, the barrel came down on my head.
He had blood all pouring down his shirt. And the police drove us and the black people they'd been trying to arrest from inside the car and drove. We all packed in and drove to the police station.
I started going to the telephone. I told them no, I was too busy. I wasn't going to accept any more calls. And then they hollered out again and said, "Well, this is Martin Luther King calling from Atlanta. He wants to talk to you." And I told him, I didn't care who it was, that it was too late now. He didn't come before, and now we're already in battle.
On Sunday, that tension exploded in front of the Monroe courthouse as white bystanders clashed with Negro demonstrators. Alarm spread quickly, and soon many Negroes were enraged by reports of beatings and the jailings of some demonstrators.
That was a fearful day, because people were getting beat up and imprisoned, and we didn't know where people were, and there was shots fired and everything, you know. But the scary part was when the Seagulls came onto the neighborhood, and the crowd wanted to, you know, attack them and kill them, and Rob said, "No, protect them, you know, don't let nothing happen to them." And that was the time I felt, you know, I was going to have to fire on some of our own people, because they were really angry.
According to Mrs. Stegall, she and her husband drove to Monroe Sunday afternoon to visit her mother. They heard of the disturbances in town, but weren't involved until they took a shortcut to their destination. Then on Winchester Street, passing through a Negro neighborhood, a crowd suddenly blocked their path. Mrs. Stegall tells what happened then in these words.
Everybody had a gun of some kind. It was some of the awfulest guns I've ever seen. And I remember one fellow that come pushing through like that he had a sawed-off gun, a double barrel thing. He said, "Let me kill him, let me kill him," just like that.
When did Williams come on the scene?
Well, after they had took us out of our car at gunpoint and marched us up the street to his house, and that was the first time I saw him in his yard.
They were very, very angry, and I could see that they were very angry. So when I came down into the yard, said to me, "Oh, we've been kidnapped." And so I said, "Well, lady, you're not kidnapped here. If you want to go, you're free to go whenever you are ready." I said, "But you got to go through this crowd." And she said, "Well, if you take us out of here, we'll be all right." I said, "No, I'm not going to take you out, because I didn't bring you here, and I'm not going to take you away. That you're free to leave whenever you're ready to go."
It hadn't even dawned on me that I was kidnapped. I didn't know I was God.
And the people were screaming, still screaming. Some were practically hysterical. And one man started crying, just crying like a baby. And he said, "Give me a gun, give me a gun, let me kill them." And so I could tell that the crowd was becoming too tense. And I got into the crowd around the Stegalls, and I started pushing the crowd away from them.
According to Mrs. Stegall, she and her husband were to remain in the nearby house, which had been used to quarter Freedom Riders, until 9 o'clock, when they were released and drove through police lines to safety. After the Stegalls were taken from his house, William says he received a threatening phone call which prompted him to leave. He described it this way.
They said to me that, Robert, you caused a lot of trouble in this town, and now state troopers are on the way, and in 30 minutes you'll be hanging in the courthouse square. So I told my wife that we were going to have to leave.
We just walked out the back door, and that was one of the most frightful things that I've ever done. I had on the worst dress you could ever imagine because I had just washed my clothes the day before, or no, that day, and we had them hanging on the line. I left my clothes hanging on the line. Rob had a machine gun, and I had his Luger, and the two boys were right there with us. And we stood there until the police car went down Fairley Avenue, and then we crossed Fairley Avenue and continued down the back alley.
As soon as we got in New York, I flashed my picture on television, said that I was extremely dangerous. So this complicated the matter because we didn't expect that. You see, because when we left, there was no kind of a warrant or anything. I was given political asylum in Cuba. I was there as an exile in Cuba, and I lived there as an exile.
Now, were there any particular Cuban leaders who gave you this asylum, or was it just, in general, the government there?
Well, actually, this political exile was given to me under the direct orders of Fidel Castro himself.
From Havana, Cuba, free territory of the Americas, Radio Free Dixie invites you to listen to the free voice of the South. Stay with us for music, news, and commentary by Robert F. Williams.
He came up with the idea of Radio Free Dixie, and we had to fight. He had to fight hard within Cuba to get it on the air. But eventually Fidel Castro, when he told Fidel Castro what his idea was, he said, well, we'll see what we can do. So finally they allowed him to have the Radio Free Dixie program.
Radio Free Dixie is presenting the soul side of rock in the Year of Fire. The social conscious rock and roller is calling attention to social injustice. Yes, these new cats are no slackers. We are tuned in to their wavelength, and we dig them plenty.
You can hear it throughout the South. You can hear it in New York City. You can hear it in Seattle. You can hear it in Los Angeles. And, they're trying desperately to jam it, and eventually, between the Cuban censorship and the FBI and the CIA jamming it, it reaches a much smaller audience eventually.
But we would just almost embrace the radio just to hear his voice. That was the treat of the weekend.
Radio Free Dixie is proud to present these seldom heard songs of brutal oppression and dehumanization that no American radio station dares broadcast.
The music was fantastic, the jazz was fantastic, and sometimes now I can hear those songs echoing in my mind, Watermelon Man and The Protest, Nina Simone, Mississippi Goddamn.